All right, so we're diving deep into the world of Sid Meier.
Ooh, a good one.
You bet. You've given us his Wikipedia article,
Yeah.
so obviously you're interested in the guy behind like all the classic strategy games, the simulation games, all that.
The big hits, for sure. He's a legend.
We're gonna unpack all that, his life, his whole career, how he designs games.
His philosophy, yeah.
You'll get a sense of how this, computer science guy ended up basically making gaming what it is today.
It's pretty wild, actually, when you think about it. Not the usual path.
No, not at all. So let's go back to the beginning. Sid Meier, born 1954 in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada.
Canada, eh?
Parents were Dutch and Swiss, so he's a citizen of like two countries right off the bat.
Wow, international, right from the start. You could almost see that in his game, like that global scale.
That's interesting. But then when he's 3, family moves to Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
So he's got this Canadian thing, but also American, kind of a mix.
A unique blend.
Right. Fast forward, he goes to the University of Michigan, double major in history and computer science.
Now, that's a combo you don't see every day. Like, it's almost like it was meant to be, right? History for the games he'd make later.
Yeah. You have to wonder how many computer science guys are like reading history books in their spare time.
Not many, I bet.
But here's the thing. After college, he doesn't make games. He's developing cash register systems.
Really?
For department stores.
That's a far cry from Civilization.
Totally. It's easy to forget how different things were back then, tech-wise.
Oh, yeah, the PC was just becoming a thing.
Right, even those cash registers were like high-tech at the time. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Around 81, he gets an Atari 800.
Oh, wow, the classic Atari.
And it's like a light bulb moment. He sees what you can do with programming, like you can make video games.
It was a game changer for a lot of designers back then. But for him, with his coding background, it was different. He saw how to mix out with history, with making something fun.
Yeah, totally. And he meets this guy, Bill Steely, at work. They both love games, and they decide to go for it.
Bold move.
It's the early 80s, software's booming, PCs are taking off, and they start Microprose.
Wow, a legendary studio just like that.
And it all starts with like two guys who just love games first. They're making these 2D action games.
Okay.
Get this. Meier designed a platformer called Floyd of the Jungle.
Floyd of the Jungle, huh? That's not what he's known for.
Nope, not at all. But everyone starts somewhere.
You got to experiment, find your thing.
Exactly. Then they hit it big with flight simulators, starting with Hellcat H in 82.
Oh, yeah, Microprose, the Flight Sim Kings.
Meier was the designer, programmer, the whole thing.
They were so detailed for the time, those games.
It's like the foundation for the complex systems he'd do later.
Like in Civilization.
Right. Funny thing is, his name wasn't on a game box until Formula One Racing, same year, 82.
Took a while to get that credit.
It did, but by 86, his co-founder Steely, he's promoting Meier like a big shot, like a movie director.
Like an auteur.
Yeah, there's actually a funny story about that.
Oh.
Robin Williams, the comedian, they're at this software dinner thing with Robin Williams, and Williams, out of nowhere, he says to Steely, "You should put Sid's name on the games, make him the star."
No way! Robin Williams said that.
Yep, and they did. 1987, Sid Meier's Pirates, first game with his name on it.
Smart move. Pirates was a huge change from their other games. More exploration, adventure. Putting his name on it was like, this is something new.
And it worked. Huge hit. But even with his name on it, he wasn't always the lead designer.
Oh, really?
Like Brian Reynolds, he did a lot on Civilization 2, Alpha Centauri, Colonization. It's a team effort, even for someone like Meier.
Yeah, it's not just one guy. It makes you think.
Speaking of Civilization, that came after a big shift for Meier.
What do you mean?
After F-19 Stealth Fighter, he's done with flight sims.
Really? That was their thing?
He gets inspired by SimCity and Empire.
Interesting.
SimCity with the city building, Empire was early turn-based strategy on a world map.
Huh. Those games really changed how people saw strategy.
They did. So he makes Sid Meier's Railroad Tycoon, another big hit.
I remember that one.
Building your railway, connecting cities. Then, of course, the game that changes everything, Sid Meier's Civilization.
Game. So many hours spent on that. And he only designed the first one, right?
Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? Shows how strong the idea was.
Sure.
But behind the scenes, things at Microprose, they're changing.
Oh.
Around 1990, Meier sells his half of the company to Steely.
What happened?
They didn't agree on where the company was going. Steely wanted arcade games. Meier thought it was too risky.
Huh. Classic clash, the creative vision versus the business side.
Yeah. Meier stays on, but the gaming world, it's always changing. 1993, Microprose merges with Spectrum Holobyte.
Big changes.
Fast forward a bit, Spectrum starts cutting costs. Jobs at Microprose get cut.
Oof, that's never good.
Meier, Jeff Briggs, Brian Reynolds, they're not happy.
I can imagine.
So 1996, they do something bold.
They go and make their own company, right?
Exactly. For Axis Games, a whole new chapter begins.
Wow, I can't wait to hear about that.
We'll get into all that in part 2.
So they just walked away there for Axis.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's amazing how often, like, these big shakeups lead to something even better.
Totally. And they hit the ground running. Firaxis starts in 96, and the next year, boom, Sid Meier's Gettysburg.
A Civil War game, huh? Interesting choice for their first one.
Yeah, it was a bit different. First time they did real-time tactics instead of turn-based, like Civ.
Right, right.
But they were willing to try new stuff, even as a new company.
And it paid off. I mean, they did Sid Meier's Antietam next in 98.
Right, completing the Civil War set. Then came Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri in 99. Like, imagine Civilization.
But in space.
Exactly. It had everything, building your society, tech, diplomacy, war.
Alien life forms, crazy new technologies, even, like, philosophy that could change your whole civilization.
I remember those late nights trying to win.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. While Firaxis is doing these epic strategy games, Meier's working on something totally different.
What, like a side project?
Back in 96, he has a patent for a music composition system.
Hold on, music. That's a curveball.
I know, right? Used it in a game called CPU Bach.
Wow, so you had the strategy games, then this music thing. It's like, how do those even connect with his brain?
Maybe he's just fascinated by systems, how things work, civilizations, trains, music, it's all connected.
Makes sense. But okay, back to Firaxis. There's this story about a secret game engine Meier's been making.
Since like 96?
A secret engine. Come on, that's too cool.
It's true. People who work at Firaxis say he's always messing with this engine, prototyping stuff.
And no one outside's seen it?
Nope. Total mystery. Like, what's he making in there?
Adds a whole other layer to him, right? The games we know, and then this secret project going on for years.
And it's supposedly based on the original Civ code.
Wow.
But he keeps updating it, changing it, it's evolving with him.
It's like a living piece of his process, showing how he keeps innovating even after all this time.
But even geniuses, they have things that don't work out.
What do you mean?
Early 2000s, Meier and his team, they're working on a dinosaur game.
Dinosaurs. From Sid Meier. I would have played that.
I know, right? But they tried everything. Turn-based, real-time.
By him?
Meier said it wasn't fun enough.
He's all about the fun, isn't he?
Which is his whole philosophy, right?
Yeah, prioritizing fun over, like, being super historically accurate.
Which is interesting. You'd think a guy making historical games would want all the details, right?
I would.
He does, to a point, but he'll bend things if it makes the game better. He said, and I quote, "I emphasize the fun parts of a simulation and throw out the rest."
So it's about the feeling, the core of it, not getting lost in the tiny stuff.
Exactly. And like Civilization is perfect for that. Think about how it takes these huge historical things like technology or culture
Yeah.
and turns them into gameplay that makes sense. You're not getting a history degree, but you're getting the big picture, and it's fun.
He balances complexity with being easy to pick up better than almost anyone.
And another thing, he doesn't like showing blood and gore.
Really?
Even in his war games, it's always abstract, stylized.
That's kind of cool, actually, especially nowadays when games are so focused on that.
It's like he knows you can be intense, dramatic, without showing everything.
Yeah, it makes you think.
And his design process, it's all about playing the game.
Huh.
He designs by playing, constantly tweaking, changing things until it feels right.
So he's not just like thinking about it, he's in there playing it.
Hands-on, totally. It's all about, is this fun? Is this engaging? How can I make it better?
It's like he's talking to the game itself.
You got it. But there's more to him than just games. He lives in Hunt Valley, Maryland, with his wife, Susan.
Nice.
And get this, she was one of the first employees at Firaxis.
No way. That's awesome. A true power couple of gaming.
They're both really religious, active in their church.
That's cool. It shows you can be successful and still have that side to you.
It does. He's also got a son, Ryan Meier, who's also a game dev, worked at Blizzard, even Firaxis.
Wow, so it runs the family.
It does, and we got to talk about the awards, the recognition.
Oh yeah, he's basically royalty in the gaming world.
In 96, GameSpot called him the most influential person in computer gaming, period.
That's huge, like more than the guys who made the hardware, the early pioneers.
Then, Hall of Fame in 99, Lifetime Achievement Award in 08.
Well-deserved. He's been making games for so long, touched so many players.
And his games are still played everywhere, from Civ to Pirates to Railroad Tycoon.
It's hard to picture gaming without him, honestly.
It is. But as we go to the last part of our deep dive, what sticks out to you the most about his story? What's the big takeaway?
Good question. I think it's got to be that focus on fun. Like, he could have made these super realistic games.
For history buffs.
Yeah, or tried to be trendy and make what everyone else was making.
But he didn't. He stuck with his idea that games are about enjoyment first and foremost.
And that's a lesson for everyone, not just game devs.
It is. Sometimes simple is best. And it's okay to be playful, to experiment, not be so serious.
And maybe, if we do that, follow our passions, make things that are joyful, we can do amazing things, like Sid Meier.
Well said. But that secret game engine,
Yeah.
what do you think he's been working on? I have no clue, but it's got to be something good. Before we get lost in theories, though, let's look at some of his other games. There's a whole world of Sid Meier out there, just waiting to be explored. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Sid Meier. You've given us his Wikipedia article, but to really get him, you got to look at the games.
Yeah, it's one thing to read about it, another to experience it.
Right, and there's so many games. Where do we even start?
Well, you can't talk about Sid Meier without talking about Civilization.
The big one, yeah. One of the best-selling franchises ever.
Like 73 million copies, and that was back in 2024.
It's still going.
It's crazy. It's more than a game at this point. It's like a cultural thing.
Totally. People have been playing Civ for decades, building empires, fighting wars, all that.
Oh, yeah. And the memes, the jokes, it's got it all.
I think what hooks people is that scope, You start small,
A little try.
and over time, hundreds of turns, your civilization grows.
You're making choices, tech, government, military.
It makes you think long-term, like, what are the consequences of this?
And you can play it so many ways. Warmonger, diplomat, scientist.
It's flexible, yeah, and the music, the art style, so iconic.
It's Civilization. It's instantly.
But let's switch gears from world domination to, well, pirates.
Oh, pirates.
It's a classic. It captures that whole feeling, sailing, treasure, sword fights.
It's fun, even now. You can tell Meyer was having a blast making it.
And it's not super historically accurate, which is fine.
Yeah, it's about the spirit of it, not the exact details.
And the remake in 2004 proves a good design lasts.
They updated it, but it's still pilots at its heart.
Totally. Speaking of lasting designs, there's Railroad Tycoon.
Oh, yeah. Building your railway empire, connecting cities, making money.
It's got the history, but it's also about economics.
You got to think about resources, competition. It's not just laying track.
It's got that Sid Meier touch, complex but still fun.
And those are just the famous ones. There's colonization, Alpha Centauri.
The Civil War games, so much variety.
It's amazing how he stayed relevant for so long, always doing something new.
It's that curiosity, never afraid to experiment.
It makes you wonder, with that secret game engine.
What's he cooking up?
Maybe it'll be the next big thing.
Who knows? But as we wrap up our deep dive, I'm thinking sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected places.
Like from a game designer.
Right. And with Sid Meier, it's about play, about having fun, about what we can create when we're not afraid to try.
Yeah, it's inspiring.
It is. It reminds us to keep exploring, to experiment, to find new ways to engage with the world.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll be the ones people are deep diving into.
Maybe so. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Sid Meier. Until next time, Che